Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Today's session is really about integrating Work 365 with accounting systems. It's a cool date today, actually, February 20th, 2020. So it's 02202020, kind of nice. Okay, I'm going to get started. Hopefully everybody can see my screen and hear me okay. All right. So thank you for joining me today. This session is being recorded, so if you're unwilling or unable, please drop off. If you're unwilling to be part of the recording, please drop off. My name is Ismail. I'm the CEO of IoTap. We're based out of the DC metro area. Planning to go for about 45 minutes today. My company, IoTap, is a Microsoft Cloud Solutions provider, and Work 365 is the application that we've built on Dynamics 365 for cloud focused companies that are looking to scale their business. I have an awesome young man with me today on the call as part of the presentation, Chris Hansen. Chris Hansen is the product manager for the SmartConnect application from E1 Solutions. So welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining me. Chris will be doing a demo of the SmartConnect tool to show us how it can be used to integrate Work 365 with your ERP and accounting systems. All right, so getting into our agenda. Basically, these are some of the things I'll talk about today. Just, the billing and accounting system landscape. I usually like to do these landscape slides. We talk about the invoicing process a little bit in Work 365, so you have a good foundation around what we're trying to do. I'll do a demo of the QuickBooks connector within Work 365, and then Chris will do a demo of the SmartConnect tool, and then we'll wrap up here. Okay. All right, so I see from some of the registrations in the audience that we have a mix of participants, some of you that are brand new to Work 365 and some of you that are existing users. So for those of you that may be new to Work 365, just a quick introduction. Work 365 is a subscription management and billing automation application that helps you scale your revenue with the focus really being around recurring and subscription-based revenue. Work 365 is built on Dynamics 365 as a native application. So you're able to use all of the Dynamics 365 capabilities, including sales management and other applications as well, like customer service and PSA. It helps your sales team sell more efficiently and your finance team really collect cash faster. The idea is that you can go from quote to cash quickly and automate processes around sales, service, and billing, right? It sits in between your sales team and your billing and finance team and coordinates all the stuff that happens in between. All right. So we've been following these 9 principles around recurring billing and subscription management in this webinar series that I've been doing. We cover these topics one at a time, sort of as a guide and to give us direction around how to think about our business and really build a successful practice around what we're trying to do with recurring billing. This is something I've acquired from content around Zoro. I've mentioned this in the past as well. They're a leader in the recurring billing space. I'm not going to dwell on all this for too long because I've done this in the past, but these are some of the key criteria, right? And we try to pick one of these topics up and discuss them on these calls. We've talked about things like collecting cash fast in the previous session, some of the building better relationships using Dynamics CRM, using the accurate intuitive invoices sessions also been done. Today's discussion is really around tight integration with accounting systems, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. So this is one of the topics. This is one of the 9 principles, and we'll look at this in some detail. So for everyone in the CSP space or generally in the IT services space, you're using some sort of provider where you provision some of the products that you're potentially reselling. If you're a Microsoft CSP using either a distributor or partner center, you probably know or should know that Work 365 has a bidirectional sync with the partner center, which means that everything in the partner center gets synced back into Work 365, and everything in Work 365 gets provisioned into this provider system. So this is sort of your daily operational hub. You may attach a customer self-service portal to this, to automate some of the additional capabilities around provisioning and things like that. But the way you think about this is your partner center or your provider has your customers and products, right? This is where you've provisioned certain things for specific customers. Now, because Work 365, because the way Work 365 is built into Dynamics, it also has customers, products, your actual sales pricing, and it generates invoices, including taxes. So it has a lot more stuff than obviously your partner center does, including all your customer data, right? Now, on the financial side of things, the accounting side of things, you need to think about things a little bit differently. There's the revenue side, which is all your billing and your invoicing, and obviously your costs as well. Work 365 is not an accounting system by any means. It is not meant to do cost management and real true profitability analysis. But whatever is in Work 365 from a revenue standpoint needs to go into your financial system, right, to complete the loop. And drive more automation and visibility as well for your customers, right? So most people are used to using their accounting system to send invoices. This accounting systems tend to be the system of record for the invoice, and so we need to make sure these invoices are getting over into the accounting systems accurately. This way, then you can enable things like the self-service portal as well, for your customers to see their invoice using the Work 365 portal that's built on Dynamics CRM, right? And there's no confusion around what is the actual accurate amounts and what the invoice should actually look like. So this is kind of what we're trying to address here in this call in terms of how to take this stuff from here and put it into your accounting system from a revenue standpoint. So, on the billing side, this is all around sales, right? You want to generate revenue, you're talking about sales and billing. However, accounting needs are a little bit more expansive. Accounting function usually talks about things like reconciliation. It's pretty common to say, hey, listen, I need to know what I'm billing is what I'm getting charged for, right? Reconciliation is an important thing. I'll touch on that as well today. Of course, profitability at the end of the day is what the accounting principles are all built on. So revenue recognition is important in terms of how you do that. So, monthly invoices have monthly recognition of the period of performance. You may be using Work 365 to generate annual invoices. You have annual customers. That revenue recognition is certainly important. And as I mentioned, cost management, of course, is important. So, having a sense of what that profitability is certainly there, certainly part of the system. Then you're going to think about, hey, the accountants want to know what is my what are the receivables like? What is my cash application? How many invoices do we have open? And once these invoices are paid, do we have an accurate understanding of what's outstanding? And then eventually things like financial statements get built out of all this stuff, and you're doing things like forecasting and insights and business metrics, right? So this is the high level understanding that we want to see if we can drive through this conversation today and touch on as many of these topics as we can through the integration and the tools we have in Work 365. Now I'm going to do a quick poll, if you don't mind, just to get a sense of what systems everybody's using on the call from an accounting standpoint, and then I'll share with you what we have as far as data is concerned from our understanding of what the partners use. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. If you could please take a few seconds and just answer this, that'll be very helpful. So I'm now distributing the poll. You should be able to see the options in there. And then if you could just please take a few minutes, well, not a few minutes, please, a few seconds and answer that, that'll be great. Looks like we have about 60%. That's great. And then we'll try to mash this up with what I have to share with you. We have 80% of the people that have voted. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds to see if it bumps up anymore. All right, looks like that's how far we'll go. I'm going to share this poll quickly with you. So it looks like we have about 45% of the people that are here using some version of QuickBooks, about 20% that are using either Nav on-prem or Business Central, and then about 20% using some combination of Dynamics ERP system like GP, SL, and F&O. So I'm going to now close the poll results and go back to my presentation. Hopefully everybody can see my presentation. I'm back on the poll slide. If you can't, then please make sure you let me know. All right, I will move on here. All right, so as you have already sensed, there's a whole bunch of ERP systems out there, right? Everybody picks one for different reasons. I don't have a comprehensive list here on my survey, and I clubbed things like QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, although they're actually very different systems with completely different capabilities. Now, here's what I'd like to share with you. This is what we have. So it's very interesting that the representation that we had on the call today is very similar to what we have from an understanding of our partners that are using the application. So there's a good bunch of us that are using, about a third that are using some version of Dynamics, a little less than a third, actually, maybe 20%. This 20% is basically localized accounting systems that are specific to certain countries, and that's the big category of other. About a third of us, a little more than a third, that are using QuickBooks, and then we see, folks using Xero and other applications like Sage as well. So I wanted to share this with you. People like to kind of understand where they fall in, with these sort of metrics, to know if they're normal or unusual in any way. So hopefully this is helpful. All right. So we talk about invoicing, and I wanted to do this today just so that we have a sense of what the invoicing process is like within Work 365, and then how that data moves into an accounting system. So the important things about an invoice, the way we see it, is when the invoice needs to get created, right, and doing that on a consistent basis. So things like automating the creation of the invoice on the specific date, and then having dates around when the invoice payments are due. Who the invoice needs to be sent to. This is sometimes tricky because, as I mentioned previously, invoices are in the accounting system. However, the customer data is not always in the accounting system. The understanding of the customer contacts is usually in your CRM system, and sending the invoice to the right person is always the first step in getting paid, right? One of the main steps, at least, in getting paid. And then finally, what needs to go into the invoice? So things like the products, prices, discounts, taxes, all those things are important to make sure that the invoice looks right, okay, and has all the right information for you to get paid and get it sent out on time. So this is how we see it: the when, who, what. Okay, now let's break that down into what this looks like in the Work 365 application really quick. So I have a screenshot here of a billing contract. Now, a billing contract is what represents the billing relationship. For all of you that are using Work 365, you probably know this really well, but just hopefully this is a good refresher. So things like payment terms are mentioned on the billing contract. Who the primary contact is, you can actually have additional contacts as well. You can have additional recipients as well that you can add into the billing contract as a free text field. What is the frequency of this invoice? Is it a monthly relationship? Is it an annual relationship or a quarterly relationship? It can all be managed in this billing contract. Have you offered a specific discount to the customer, right? So these are the kinds of things that touch on the what as well. And then there are dates. These dates are what drive when the invoice gets created. Now, what we'll do next is look at the what aspects a little bit more. Now, within a billing contract, you can have multiple subscriptions. This is an example of what a subscription form looks like. It's got the product, it's got the specific pricing. As you can see, there are things like sales units that you can have different pricing strategies on. You could have annual pricing for certain items, or monthly pricing, or quarterly pricing, it doesn't matter. And then you notice there's a cost as well. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is not a cost management system, but it gives you a sense right away on what the margin is for the item that you're selling. So when you have it when you have it provisioned, you're able to quickly spot visually whether you're in that threshold or where you want to be from a pricing strategy, right? Now, so we talked a little bit about the data elements that drive the invoice. Now, I'm going to show you what a typical invoice looks like, right? That's generated out of the system. We take all that data from the billing contract and the subscriptions, and then we're able to do things like proration. We're able to add all the specific products that are included in that billing contract. It's got the customer information that was set up in the billing contract, along with the discount items and the tax percentage as well. So this is a complete invoice that was generated automatically through Work 365 with just the setup of the billing contract and the subscriptions in the system, right? Now, I've actually got a few more things I want to point out, like the dates, right? These dates are calculated again based on the due dates and the payment terms. I mentioned this already around discounts and taxes. All this stuff gets included in the invoice automatically. All right. Now, what I'm going to do today is, show you what the QuickBooks integration looks like with Work 365 as a native application. I'm going to switch here into my system. All right, great. Hopefully everybody can see my dynamic system. All right, so now what you're looking at is a connector that's defined in Work 365. I have a connector of the type QuickBooks Online that's set up in the system. There's a whole bunch of settings that you want to think about when you set up QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop within Work 365. There are things like product mapping from what gets synced from within Work 365 into your QuickBooks system. There are other configuration settings like whether you want to use the Dynamics 365 invoice number or whether you want to allow QuickBooks to use its own invoice number. There's another setting that allows you to download the invoice PDF directly from QuickBooks instead of using the PDF from Work 365. And then there's a bunch of payment mappings that you have to complete along with certain class mapping. So Work 365 has specific set of classes, specific set of product types that are defined, and you can map them into your QuickBooks system to categorize them with the specific classes you may have there, right? So what we have in our system in Work 365 is whether you're doing a resale, which is usually driven by a net margin, which is a revenue and a cost aspect. Then you may have IP-based products. You may do hardware resale. And so each one of these classes and product categories can be mapped as well between QuickBooks and Work 365. All right, great. Now I'm going to switch over here. This is the billing contract we were looking at. This is an example of a billing contract we were looking at. And if you notice here, there's some billing automation section. There's a billing automation section here. This is what drives the automation around how the invoices are sent and synced into QuickBooks or any accounting system. With the native integration with QuickBooks, if you turn these flags on, invoices get automatically pushed into the system. If you turn the send flag on, the invoice gets automatically sent over as well. Okay. Now, what I'll show you is an invoice that was automatically generated by the system, and we'll look at what happens from the integration standpoint. Now, how I know this invoice is not synced is when I go into this Work 365 area here, there's nothing here in the accounting system section. I will also show you the actual QuickBooks environment, which is right here, and we'll look at this customer blue yonder. And you'll notice that there's only one invoice here in the system. I'm going to show you what this looks like once we actually sync this with the accounting system. So there's within the invoice record, you'll see this in the ribbon, which is there's a colorful Work 365 pull down menu, which has a whole bunch of options. We're going to select link to accounting system. It's going to open up a pop-up. Now it's already identified that this customer is mapped to an existing customer account in QuickBooks called Blue Yonder. If this hadn't been mapped, if this was the first time I was doing this, I would have the option to either create a new customer or map it to an existing customer. Either scenario works. And I'm going to hit save here, and it's going to ask me to confirm this. I'm going to confirm this. Once this process completes, the invoice will get pushed into QuickBooks, and then we'll notice here that I'll refresh this page. Actually, let me go back here. Right, we'll refresh this. Right, this is the invoice that came in from QuickBooks, from Work 365. Notice the invoice number is the same number that was used to generate the invoice within Work 365 from CRM. If I open this up, it's going to have all the same line items that are there from within Work 365. It's going to have all the proration, all the specific products. Anything that's a write-in product gets mapped as a write-in product. Anything that's a real product gets actually either synced at runtime, at real time, or if it's already there, it knows how to identify it. Okay. So this is what it looks like. And then if you look here, it's going to have the taxes as well and the discount. So everything from the invoice that's there in Work 365 gets integrated right in here. All right. Now, one more thing I want to show you. I'm going to refresh this as well. We'll go back here. I will just refresh this. All right, now when I look into this, notice it shows me that this invoice is actually synced to QuickBooks. So now I know that I don't have to do anything else. It's already there. I could also, if I didn't like this, unlink it and unsync it. Now, the other thing it did when I actually synced this invoice is change the status to billed. Now, what this means is if it's billed, this invoice is going to be eligible for your customers to view on the self-service portal. The other thing I want to mention here really quick is I had the flag turned on to download the PDF from QuickBooks. So this invoice actually is the QuickBooks invoice that was generated and then synced back into Work 365 instead of using the template that you can use from Dynamics. So this is the invoice record actually this is the invoice PDF from QuickBooks that we're able to pull, and then obviously because it's there, you can also send it out, right? So if I was doing this, I could then go ahead and say, okay, send it. Now all this stuff can be fully automated. When I do this, it's going to ask me, hey, do you want to send the existing PDF that's attached, or do you want me to? If I uncheck this, it's going to send out a brand new PDF based on the template that's associated with the billing contract. Okay. Leave the screen. So hopefully that makes sense. You've got the ability to pull the invoice from QuickBooks. You've got the ability to sync it directly using the interface on the invoice, or do it automatically as well. There's things like the bill status that indicate that this is actually a confirmed invoice synced with your accounting system. All right. Going back to my presentation. All right, so these are the things we looked at from a settings standpoint. Just want to reiterate them. You want to think about how you're going to do your payment mapping. This is all pretty simple stuff. It takes about 20-30 minutes to set all this stuff up. Confirm whether you want to use these settings in the way that makes sense for your business, right? And then you're pretty much good to go. So just some more details here. This is what happens from an accounting synchronization with QuickBooks. We synchronize the account, which is the customer itself that you're working with. These are the fields that get pushed into QuickBooks. Now, Work 365 doesn't have a bidirectional sync with QuickBooks or anything like that. It's not meant to go bidirectionally with all the data in both the systems. However, any payment statuses that are updated in QuickBooks certainly update back into Work 365 as well. On the product side, we map these fields: the product ID, product name, and the default income accounts, as I showed you there in the previous configuration settings. On the invoice record itself, there are things like due dates, line items, all of them, of course, as you saw, details, discounts, taxes, and the currency as well. Then there's also tax settings if you're using Work 365 to calculate taxes. So just some of the things you want to think about when you're setting this up. Work 365 is built in a way to support multiple accounting systems that are tied to one central dynamic CRM Work 365 system. So I could have 3 accounting systems, and it's specific to each customer. So each customer goes into one specific accounting system. Most people don't have that. Some people do. This supports that. Where do you want to send the invoice from? Do you want to send it from your QuickBooks system, or do you want to send it from Work 365? This is the thing you want to think about. You can certainly do it either way, but if you want to leverage the billing automation capabilities, you'll want to use the Work 365 settings to do that. Then, as I mentioned, you have the option to format the invoice using the Work 365 Dynamics templates, or pull the PDF directly from QuickBooks. This feature, unfortunately, is not available with the desktop version. On the desktop side, there's no way to pull the PDF directly. This is only available in QuickBooks Online. Then you're going to think about what you're going to use for the invoice number, because if you're going to reference an invoice, if your accounting system has a different invoice number than your CRM system, that kind of throws everybody off, right? That's why that capability is there, to use the Dynamics 365 invoice number, which then maps exactly to the QuickBooks invoice number, and you can use it on the self-service portal for the customers as well. And as I mentioned already, thinking about the blue billing automation features and fields. All right, now this brings us to our main event. Chris, I'm going to hand over to you here. I'm going to make you presenter. Actually, not yet. Sorry. I'll walk through the slides. I don't want to jump too far ahead. Yeah. So go ahead, Chris. You have the floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm Chris Hansen from eWin Solutions. I'm our SmartConnect product manager, and I've been with eWin Solutions for over 10 years now. And to this point, my entire time I've been with eWin, I've been focused on integration in one form or another, and mainly working with our SmartConnect tool. So I'm very happy that I get the opportunity to hop on this demonstration and this webinar and run through SmartConnect and how we work with Work 365 and IOTAP in general. So on the next slide, if you're not familiar with SmartConnect at all, it's our integration platform that we have. It's designed to do your data migrations. It's designed for ongoing synchronizations. It's built so if users need to upload individual files of data, they can do so as well to different systems that they connect to with SmartConnect. Today we'll be focused mainly on the ongoing synchronization portion of it when we're talking about Work 365 and your financial system that want to be combined. So if you haven't seen SmartConnect before, the next slide has a graphic on it that really illustrates what SmartConnect does from a high level. So we've broken SmartConnect out into kind of 4 different categories as it goes and retrieves the data from where we need to get it to when it's sending the data to the destination. So when I talk about SmartConnect, we normally start at the very top and the very bottom. So at the very top of the graphic is where you want to get that data from. So we can go ahead and grab that information from a variety of different systems that we have dedicated connections for. We can also pull data from file locations, or even from different REST-based web services using our generic REST connector. Same thing for the destination where we're sending the data to. We've got a variety of different connections built out that allow us to send that data to any one of the connection points that we have, and allows you to build either the ongoing integration or a one-time migration of that data. Now, where SmartConnect does most of its work, and the majority of the value is in the 2 blocks in the middle in terms of the triggers and the transformation. So triggers is how are we picking up that data? And you'll see on my demo in a couple minutes, in this case, we're picking up the data as a real-time process. There's no manual interaction, no human intervention. As part of running the integration, we have that all automated. In other scenarios, you might want to tie it directly to the SmartConnect API if you're tying in your website, or possibly there's something where a user just has to upload data from a file. We give you that opportunity to manually upload the data as well. So finally, the last block on here, that transformation. If you've done any integration work before, you've likely come to the realization that it's very rare where you have 2 systems where the data matches up perfectly between them. It's very rare where you have all your data that you need in one location. So with the transformation, we're able to, within SmartConnect, allow you to transform that data. You can come up with new data. You can do some validation on the information as it passes through. So it allows you to go ahead and make those changes and those adjustments as needed without having to do any coding or needing a developer to enable that. So for Work 365 specifically, and for the financial system you're connecting to, on the next screen, when people come to us and they say, all right, we want to tie this together, normally this is what they're thinking about. They're seeing Work 365. It's very tightly integrated with customer engagement and CRM. It's handling all your subscription needs. And the main request is we just want to push, or sync invoices across to our financial system, whether that's Business Central or NAV or Dynamics GP. It's a scenario that looks like this. Now, when you start thinking about it a little bit further, what this graphic actually should show is what we have on the next slide is, all right, we want the invoices, but in order to synchronize the invoice, we need to have all the supporting records as well. So at the bare minimum, we need to have the customers and accounts synchronized, and we also need the inventory and products tied together in order to get the invoices. In addition to that, you might have vendors or price lists, items, units of measure, etc., that should be synchronized as well. Now, a big benefit with SmartConnect is we can handle that flexibility. So whatever your business process might look like, in the direction you want that data to flow, we can configure the integrations to run in that manner, to make sure that you have your data where you need it when you're synchronizing the invoices from Work 365. So to illustrate that, now I'll go ahead and request to be presenter here. And what I'll show is a quick demonstration of syncing your invoices from Work 365 to Business Central in this case. But as I'm showing it, I want to point out that this applies to any other financial system you're tying it to that we have a connection point for. It doesn't have to be Business Central. So what you should see on the screen is I'm starting inside of customer engagement or inside of CRM, and I've made my own personal view here just to narrow it down so I can see some invoices for a particular customer or a particular account record called One Solution. So I've got 2 new invoices in here. We've got one that's already been marked as complete. If I switch over to Business Central, I've got that same customer opened up, and I just want to show that over on the side, we currently have 0 sales invoices sent across. So I mentioned the flexibility is one of the benefits to SmartConnect, and part of that is determining when we want to pick up and synchronize these invoices. So we can have it bring those across automatically when they get created. For the purposes of this demo, I've actually added in an additional field so I can showcase this a little bit better. So on my main invoice screen, I've just added a checkbox on here or a yes, no flag called send to ERP. So I'm going to go ahead and change that on each one of these invoices that I have. I've got 2 of them currently here. So we'll say, all right, both of these are ready to send across. Now, as I change these to yes and I resave this record, what we're doing in SmartConnect is we have a real-time trigger sitting on the back end behind these invoices saying, all right, when we see these changes occur, check my criteria. In this case, I'm just making sure that we've got this flag to send to ERP and we don't have it set to build or we don't have the ERP transaction number back yet. And if that's true, when I go ahead and save that and send that across, it automatically gets picked up by SmartConnect, and then our SmartConnect integration runs to send that to Business Central. And as I was talking and as I did that second one, that first one already integrated, wrote the transaction number back to customer engagement here and changed that over to a build status. So let me just refresh this. And now we can see we've got the second one in here as well. So with each of these, again, just want to point out their build. We've got the transaction number. When I go to Business Central, pay attention to these 2 numbers. They end in 641, 642. Those should be the new invoices that we see sitting on our One Solution customer and its card here. So when I switch over here, we will refresh this screen real quick. Now we've got our 2 invoices sitting here, and we can see our invoices came across as expected, 641 and 642. I can open each of these up to make sure that our items and everything else was synchronized as well. So in this case, we can see I took the name from the invoice and I brought that across to the reference field. We could change that. We could make that the invoice number. We could send that to a different area. Again, because it's in SmartConnect, we get the ability to choose which fields get mapped where. You can see the products came across as well. So everything seems to have, synchronized correctly. Now for the last part of this, after we get the invoice posted, normally we're gonna wait till we post the invoice and then we go ahead and pay it to flag it as paid complete inside of customer engagement. I'm skipping one of those steps. So for this demo, I'm going ahead and saying, all right, once we go ahead and post that invoice, we're gonna go back and flag that as complete and paid for inside of CRM. Again, normally a couple extra steps to receive the money, but I didn't want to take up all our time just doing the accounting portion of this. So I went ahead and posted one of them. If I switch back to my invoice list here, again, what SmartConnect should have done is we had another real-time integration so that when we refresh this, you can see the one that I posted, the Office 365 invoice has now been marked as complete. And if I open it up, like I mentioned, it's set to paid complete for the status on there. So I was showing just a very specific portion of our integrations we have between Work 365 and our financial system, in this case, Business Central. Beyond just synchronizing the invoice, I talked about we need to have integrations in place for the products and for the customers, and potentially for additional pricing info depending on your business process. What I'd like to do now is switch over to SmartConnect quickly and just show what it looks like for this integration that we had running, the initial one that picked up the invoice from Work 365 and sent it over to Business Central. So what I've switched to is SmartConnect.com. It's our hosted version of SmartConnect. We do have two deployment types, one SmartConnect.com that's online fully, and we have a Windows client, an on-premise SmartConnect as well. So depending on where your financial system and where the majority of your data is located, you could use one or the other, depending on what fits your system best. Now within SmartConnect, won't have time to go through the entire process, but the main idea behind it is your connections are your systems that you want to tie together. In this case, we were tying Work 365 / customer engagement as one system, and then Business Central was our second one. Our data sources are where we choose how we pick up that data. So in this case, I have a real-time trigger on the invoice record, and we're looking for specific criteria to be met before we send that across. And now finally, the integration process is where we tie it all together. So inside of here, we can see I've got my Work 365 invoices to Business Central real time. When I look at my data source, like I mentioned, it's a real-time data source that we're pulling from Work 365. We're looking at that invoice entity and make sure it matches our criteria. And then when we send it to our target into our integration, we're going to Business Central. And in this case, we're sending it to both the sales invoice and the sales invoice lines here. So when we look at this and we open it up, again, depending on which destination you choose in SmartConnect, you get access to all of the fields that you could, want to map something to with your integration. So in this case, we're taking the due date from customer engagement and from Work 365. We're taking the account name to make sure we match the account number. And we're setting all the different fields we may need at the different points of the invoice to allow it to be built. And the reason I wanted to show this window is because if there's data that you need to transform, we can do it through additional columns, or if there's field mappings that you think might be different from standard, it's easy enough to come in here and remap your fields to where you want it to go. So you can have your integrations do exactly what you're looking for when you're running them. So again, that was just a really quick look at SmartConnect and what an integration may look like, but I wanted to give you an idea of, all right, we have the integration, we saw the integration run, what powers it behind the scenes? And it's our different mapping windows within SmartConnect that let us have that flexibility and let you configure the integrations to run how you want to. So with that, I will give control back to Ismail here. And if you want to switch back to the slides, we'll talk about a couple of different offerings that we have.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can start sharing again. Okay, are you able to see my screen now? Back to the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, great, yeah.
Perfect. So with SmartConnect, again, we've done a few different implementations of it across different CSPs, and we've kind of come up with a few different pricing bundles with IoTap who we work with on this. So obviously, to use SmartConnect, we have a per month price on there. At this point, it's $250 per month. That's our entry level that we're looking at that allows you to have two connections. If you want to tie in additional systems, we have different subscription levels beyond this. But for this slide, we're just looking at the entry level with the expectation you're tying your financial system to Work 365. Underneath each of these, we've got kind of three main offerings that we have. The first one is our starter set. This is where the majority of your data is being driven by Work 365. Any of the accounts or customers, any of the products, the invoices that are created, all go from Work 365 down or across to your financial system, and it's pushed in that one direction. If you have a slightly more complicated business process and you want some bi-directional work, when we're looking at option 2, that's where you start using your financial system or your ERP to control, your product list, control the pricing, and have that push back to customer engagement and back to Work 365 as well. Finally, option 3, we understand that everybody has their own unique business process and their own rules that they want to follow and how their company works. And with SmartConnect, we're able to be flexible enough to handle that. So if you contact us, either contact IOTAP and our teams will work together to give you a quote on what it would look like to synchronize the data exactly how you want that.
That's great. Moving on to the next slide here, Chris.
Yes.
Thanks for that demonstration. That was great. So I'm going to start to talk about a slightly different topic and pivot a little bit more towards more of the accounting side of things again. So we looked at the invoice integration, both using the native application from within Work 365 and what the integration tool set like SmartConnect can do, right? Now, one of the other things I mentioned earlier was reconciliation. This is a very important accounting function, and we get asked this all the time. And as I mentioned, Work 365 is not an accounting system, but it's certainly important because what we're selling has to sort of match up and line up with what we get billed for. So what I have here is an example of some data that you can visually inspect and audit in your system to understand how Work 365 helps with reconciliation. Now, you may all know or not know, but if you're new, you probably don't know this, but Work 365 synchronizes and pulls in all the provider invoices from the Partner Center. So if you get an invoice from Partner Center with all the reconciliation data, Work 365 pulls all that data in. It then goes ahead and matches up every single line item on that invoice from Microsoft and matches it up to the subscriptions you have set up in your system. So this is an example of what that data matchup looks like after the invoice from the Partner Center has been pulled into the Work 365 system. As you can see here, there's a whole bunch of subscriptions, there's a bunch of costs, quantities, and selling prices. Now, as you can see, if I'm visually eyeballing this, I can tell that the quantity from the Microsoft Partners provider invoice says 10. Okay, the subscription quantity in my system says 10. All looks good. The selling price for me in my subscription is $12.50, and the cost price from Microsoft is 10. Looks great. I'm visually inspecting this. I feel good about the reconciliation here. However, there's an issue here where I can see that the quantity is 36 and the quantity in the subscription is 9. Right now, this happens quite a bit because Microsoft's invoicing cycle to you is potentially going to be different from the invoicing cycle with your customer. Now, that's when you need to have an understanding of really what happened in the system. I know in this instance that the quantity was changed from 36 to 9 in between the time that we received this invoice and when the customer received their invoice. So this is a visual inspection. I'm able to tell that there's something off here, but there's good reason for it, and I don't have to be concerned. But I wanted to make sure that this is how you can kind of see what's really going on to inspect that your selling price and your unit price, cost price, are in line with the quantities and the items you're getting billed from Microsoft. So this is one way in which you can do some reconciliation, right, within the systems. All right, another important topic that comes up a lot is deferred revenue. Work 365 allows you to bill invoices on a monthly basis and on an annual basis or a quarterly basis. As I mentioned before, the billing contract actually has an invoice. It generates the invoice. The invoice has a bunch of line items. Revenue recognition is important if you're doing annual invoices and you're doing quarterly invoices, which means that you've got to take that invoice that you generate for your customer and potentially spread that amount over the course of the period of performance. Now, Work 365 actually has these fields within each invoice line item. An example that I have here, so we call them period of performance fields, right? So what that means is, if you have a monthly invoice, the period of performance is usually 1, because 1 month is when you'd recognize the revenue. Here's an example that I have. So if there was an annual invoice that was generated for $12,000 at the beginning of the year, January 1st, 2020, these are the specific line items that would appear for this particular invoice, assuming that there's only one line item here. It would say that the period of performance amount is 1,000. It would say the last period of performance was January 1st, 2020, and the performance periods are 12 months. Now, we're able to take all this data and then create your deferred revenue calculations and things like that very quickly through our Power BI reports, right? So this is one thing I wanted to mention. So we touched on the reconciliation side in the previous slide and how you can think about deferred revenue as well. Okay, so just recapping here a little bit, integration options, if you're thinking about using, well, you probably already have, what you're using. With QuickBooks Online and Desktop, you can use our native integration. If you're using Xero, there's a great third-party app from the app source that you can take advantage of. I know a lot of partners are using that. And of course, as we looked at with SmartConnect and the E1 product, there's a whole bunch of things you can do with Business Central, Nav, GP. So talk to us about using SmartConnect for those one of those systems. All right, we're wrapping up here, getting to the end. I mentioned the reports. This is an example of what those reports look like. There's a revenue report that tells you what the trends are from a recurring revenue standpoint, and the deferred revenue report. These are some of the Power BI reports we have. And what I want to do is talk to you about how to get them. So we're getting to the end of this presentation. In fact, we are at the end of it now. Actually, before I talk about that, I'd like to just answer some of the questions I typically get on these calls. Just ahead, just sort of as a preemptive thing, this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel and will be posted on our Yammer group as well. If you're interested in receiving a recording of this, reach out to us. Work 365 is available in countries wherever Dynamics 365 is supported, so worldwide, actually. It can be used for indirect and direct billers with one or more partner centers. We support multiple currencies, and we now have multi-language support as well. We can do localization if you need to do that for your specific country as well. And I think that covers some of the most recurring questions that I get. Now, there are a couple more announcements as I have here on the screen. Like all good marketers, we're trying to grow our social media presence. So I have 2 specific asks of you. If you could follow us on social media, these are the locations we're available online. And if you could post this line, Work 365 for billing automation on Dynamics 365, we will give you these we will give you these 2 Power BI reports. We'll work with you directly and have these set up for you in your system to help you get the recurring revenue report that I just showed you and the deferred revenue as well. So these 2 items, I'm happy to have them set up in your environment using Power BI. If you could do these 2 things for us, if you're already following us on social media, please post this line. If you're not, then please follow us and then post this line. Again, if you're thinking about the integration packages with your accounting systems, reach out to us. We'll coordinate with the SmartConnect product team and get you something that you can use. And finally, we're going to be at the Extreme UG Summit in Barcelona. Not exhibiting there, but we'll have some folks there. I'm definitely going to be there, so if you're there, we'd love to meet you. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you very much for your patience and for hanging in there. We'll take questions now. Okay, I have a couple of questions. That's great. Let's see if we can answer this. Okay, yeah, will account contact info in Work 365 overwrite info in QBD? The answer is no. What you would do is within Work 365, when you go ahead and sync the account, you have the option to match it to an existing account in your QuickBooks system. If you don't match it, it's going to create a new one. So in your system, you'll have the option, if I can go back, I'll see if I can show this to you. I'm going to go back here. If you can still see my screen. Now I'm in the account form. If I go here and I say, link to accounting system, I have the option here to either create a new one. In this case, it's actually already linked, but this dropdown becomes available and you're able to then link it to a specific customer account if it already exists or create a new one. Hopefully this answers your question. One more question. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can open these up. Yes, we can certainly send out some of the stuff over. No problem at all. What else can I answer? Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we'll wrap up here. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. We'll make these presentations and the recording available as well.